My son charged me rent in December while his mother-in-law stayed free. By January, I was signing the purchase agreement for my own villa on the coast. I never thought my own child would charge me simply for existing under the same roof. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never expected to share. And if you feel, even for a second, that this sounds familiar, I just ask that you hit like and subscribe. It will help me keep venting. The holiday lights twinkled on the small artificial tree in the living room of the house in Phoenix, those same lights I had bought last year with my meager Social Security check. The smell of spiced cider mingled with the aroma of the traditional holiday stuffing and potatoes I'd been preparing since 5 in the morning, my wrinkled hands folding and wrapping each batch with the recipe my mother taught me when I was barely 20. It was December 23rd, the night before Christmas Eve. At 71, I had woken up with that silly excitement you feel when you believe the family will finally gather to celebrate, to laugh, to hug like in the old days when my husband, Robert, was still alive and this house was filled with happy voices and the sound of grandkids tearing around the backyard deck. I had put on my navy blue dress, the one Robert gave me for our last anniversary before the cancer took him. I carefully styled my hair, put on the tiny pearl earrings that belonged to my mother, and even dabbed on a bit of the perfume I saved for special occasions. I wanted to look nice. I wanted my children to be proud of their mother. The formal china set was laid out, the one we only used for Christmas and important birthdays. The antique servingware, inherited from my grandmother, each piece hand-painted, telling stories of generations past. I had folded the cloth napkins into flowers, just as my mother-in-law taught me, and placed the silverware in the exact order I learned when I worked for an affluent family back in the 70s. Michael arrived at 7 with Chelsea and the kids. My oldest son, 45, with the prominent gut from too much desk work, and a way of walking that lately reminded me more of a stranger than the boy I carried through feverish nights. Chelsea came with that forced smile she had perfected after 12 years of marriage, the one she used when she had to pretend everything was fine but was internally seething with resentment. The grandkids gave me quick, obligatory kisses on the cheek, the kind teenagers give when their parents make them, and went straight to their phones without even asking how I was or if I needed help. Jake, 16, didn't even look up from his screen. Olivia, 14, mumbled a "Hi, Grandma," so softly I barely heard it. We ate in strained silence. I kept serving, collecting plates, asking if they wanted more gravy, more rolls, more cider. Chelsea ate quickly, as if every bite was an obligation she had to fulfill before escaping. Michael constantly checked his phone, supposedly for work, but I could catch glimpses of him checking football scores and social media. When we finished dinner and I stood up to clear the plates, Michael cleared his throat in that way that signaled he had something important to say. Chelsea straightened her back and adopted her executive face, that serious expression she used for important meetings at the insurance firm where she worked. "Mom, sit down. We need to talk to you about something important," Michael said, his voice sounding strangely formal, as if he were addressing an employee, not the woman who birthed and raised him. I sat down slowly, that awful feeling churning in my stomach when you know something very bad is about to happen. My hands started to sweat, and my heart raced. On the television, the holiday music channel continued playing Christmas carols, a stark contrast to the tension in the air. "Look, Mom," he continued, avoiding my gaze, "the economic situation is really tight. Household expenses have shot up, utilities, food, everything is more expensive. And, well, we think it's only fair that everyone contributes equally." Chelsea interrupted him with that cold voice she used to make it clear who truly held the power in the house. "What Michael is trying to say, Patricia, is that we can no longer afford to subsidize adults who don't generate income proportional to the expenses they create." I froze. I literally felt as if someone had opened the refrigerator of my soul and all my internal warmth had suddenly escaped. Adults who don't generate income? Expenses I create? Proportional? I don't understand, I managed to whisper, my voice sounding like a frightened child. "We need you to start paying rent, Mom," Michael finally blurted out, ripping off the band-aid in one go. "Starting in January. Something fair, proportional to the space you occupy and the utilities you use." Time stopped. The cheerful carol on the TV continued playing its happy tune about holiday peace and family togetherness, but I felt like I was falling down a bottomless cliff. The tree lights kept twinkling, the plates remained dirty on the table, the scent of cinnamon from the cider still floated in the air, but my world had been cleaved in two. But I've lived here since your father died," I choked out, my voice breaking. "I help with chores, I watch the children when you go out, I cook, I clean, yes, but that doesn't cover the actual expenses," Chelsea cut in with that calculated cruelty that had wounded me so many times over the last 3 years. "Electricity, water, gas, internet, cable, all of that costs real money, not just domestic labor." My eyes welled up with tears that I desperately tried to hold back. I thought of all the times I had used my meager savings to buy medicine when one of the children was sick, and they were short until payday. I remembered when I sold my gold locket to help pay Jake's tuition. The nights I stayed awake tending to Olivia when she had pneumonia, while they rested. How much? I asked, because I needed to know the full extent of this nightmare. We haven't calculated the exact amount yet, Michael said, scratching his head like he did when he was a boy and knew he'd done something wrong. But something fair. Maybe around $700 a month. $700. Nearly half of my Social Security check. The money I used for my medications, for my small treats, for having something put away for an emergency. The grandkids remained glued to their phones, oblivious to how their parents had just destroyed their grandmother on Christmas Eve. On the TV, Silent Night began to play, that song about the holy, silent night, while I felt my world crumble into tiny pieces I'd never be able to put back together. I couldn't sleep that night. I stayed lying in my small back room, the one they assigned me when I came to live with them after Robert died. A room without an outside window, barely enough space for my twin bed and the old dresser I'd brought from my previous house. The mattress was sunken on the left side where I always slept, and at night, I could hear all the household noises, the TV in the living room, loud conversations, footsteps passing in the main hallway. From my bed, I could hear Michael and Chelsea talking in their master bedroom, which was right next door. Their voices were muffled by the thin wall, but clear enough for me to understand every cruel word they said about me. It was about time we told her, I heard Chelsea's voice, radiating undisguised satisfaction. 3 years supporting her for free while we kill ourselves working. Meredith was right when she said older folks just become a burden. Yeah, but I hope she doesn't get too dramatic, Michael replied with a tired sigh. You know how she is? Always playing the victim when things don't go her way. Victim. That word pierced me like a rusty knife. Victim? After everything I had done for them? After selling my own house to help them with the down payment on this house, where they were now charging me to breathe. Anyway, Chelsea continued, if she can't pay, we know what to do. We need that room for your home office. Or we could rent it to a college student. We'd be much better off with $800 a month. My room. They spoke of my room as if I were no longer in it. As if I were an object they could move or dispose of based on their convenience. I covered my mouth with my hand to stifle my sobs, because I didn't even have the right to cry out loud in that house. Christmas Eve morning arrived cold and gray, as if even the sky were mourning the death of my holiday illusion. I got up early, as always, to prepare breakfast. In the kitchen, I found Chelsea drinking coffee and talking on the phone with her mother. Yes, Mom, everything's ready for you to arrive tomorrow, she was saying in a sweet voice she never used with me. We're putting you in the guest room, the one with the private bath and the new AC unit. You'll be perfectly comfortable, don't worry about a thing. The guest room. The room with the private bathroom, with air conditioning, with windows overlooking the yard where natural light streamed in all day. The room I had suggested using when I first moved in, but which they told me was too nice for daily use. No, Mom, you don't have to bring anything. This is your home. Just enjoy yourself, we'll take care of everything, Chelsea continued, while I started making scrambled eggs that no one had asked for but that I knew they expected to find ready. When she ended the call, she continued eating breakfast as if nothing had happened. She didn't speak to me, she didn't ask how I had slept after last night's conversation, she showed not a shred of guilt or consideration. To her, I had become invisible. Worse than invisible, I had become an unnecessary expense. That afternoon, Meredith, Chelsea's mother, arrived. A woman my age, but who looked 10 years younger thanks to all the money she spent on beauty treatments and expensive clothing. She arrived in a taxi from the airport, laden with luggage as if she were staying 3 months instead of 3 days. My beautiful girl, she exclaimed, hugging Chelsea as if they hadn't seen each other in years, though I knew they video chatted daily. They welcomed her like royalty. Michael carried all her suitcases upstairs, Jake and Olivia rushed to greet her with genuine enthusiasm, and Chelsea gave her a tour of the entire house as if she were a special guest. Look, Mom, here's your room. I changed the sheets to those silk ones you love, and I cranked up the AC so it's nice and cool when you want to rest. I followed them at a distance, like a shadow, carrying the tray with the chamomile tea I had prepared without being asked. When I entered the guest room to place it on the nightstand, Meredith looked at me as if she had just noticed my existence. Oh, hello, Patricia. How are you? She said with that cold politeness that educated people use with the catering staff. Fine, Meredith. Welcome, I replied, trying to smile. Oh, Patricia, you're not staff here anymore, Chelsea laughed with a cruelty disguised as a joke. Now you're a tenant, too. We're charging her rent like anyone else. The comment was a public slap in the face. Meredith raised her eyebrows in surprise and then let out an uncomfortable little laugh. Well, that's good that you're getting things organized better, she said, and immediately changed the subject. That night, during the Christmas Eve dinner, I sat at the family table one last time, unknowingly. Meredith occupied the seat of honor, where Robert used to sit. I was relegated to a corner, serving and clearing plates like a maid working for tips. The conversations revolved around Meredith's plans, her trips, her friends at the country club, her real estate investments that gave her excellent monthly returns. She spoke of her dividends as casually and naturally as one speaks of the weather, while I mentally calculated whether my remaining $800 from my Social Security check would cover the $700 in rent they intended to charge me. My stocks gave me excellent returns last year, Meredith commented while cutting into her smoked turkey. I invested in some tech companies that are soaring. I've made over $100,000 this year alone. Dollars. She spoke of dollars as I spoke of quarters to buy groceries. Her portfolio was worth more than everything I had earned in my entire life. You're so smart, Mom. Michael flattered her. We should learn from you, right, honey? With those kinds of gains, you could buy a villa on the coast. Everyone laughed. A villa on the coast. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if money were something that just appeared when you needed it. I continued eating in silence, feeling every bite catch in my throat. No one asked how I was, no one included me in the conversation, no one noticed my eyes were red from secret crying. When dinner ended, Meredith retired to her air-conditioned room while I stayed behind washing dishes and cleaning the kitchen. Chelsea went to watch TV with the kids, and Michael went out to the yard to smoke a cigarette, leaving me alone with the mountain of dirty dishes and the sound of carols playing on the radio, mocking my Christmas misery. That night, while everyone slept comfortably in their air-conditioned beds, I stayed awake in my windowless room, sweating from the heat and drowning in the bitterness of discovering that, to my own family, I was worth less than a random tenant. The first days of January felt like a death sentence. On January 2nd, while putting away Christmas ornaments in damp cardboard boxes, Chelsea approached me with a sheet of paper and a calculator in her hands. She had that fake smile she used to appear professional, but which gave me chills. Patricia, we've done the exact calculations, she announced, as if giving me the best news in the world. It will be $700 monthly. That includes your room, water, electricity, gas, internet, and a proportional share of basic groceries. $700. My Social Security check was $1,500. After paying that rent, I would be left with $800 for medicine, clothes, transport, any medical emergency, any small comfort I might want in my final years. But also, Chelsea continued, consulting her notes like a ruthless accountant, if you want to continue using the washing machine, that will be $20 extra per week. If you want cable TV in your room, another $25 a month. And if you need us to store food for you in the main refrigerator, $50 monthly for space occupied. I was speechless. Not only were they charging me to exist, but every basic right came with an additional price tag. When had my life become a list of billable services? And if I can't afford all that? I asked, my voice barely audible. Well, then you'd have to look for other options, she replied with that elegant cruelty she had perfected. There are very respectable assisted living facilities in town. Or maybe some distant relative who could help you. Assisted living. The word hit me like ice water. I imagined myself in one of those places I had visited to deliver food during past holidays, full of abandoned elderly people watching television with vacant eyes, waiting for visitors who never arrived. That same afternoon, while Meredith was saying goodbye with hugs and promises to return soon, I went to my room and pulled out an old notebook from under the mattress where I kept my accounts. Small numbers, written in pencil, representing every dollar I had saved during years of austere living. I had a secret that neither Michael nor Chelsea knew. When I sold the house where I lived with Robert, I didn't tell them the real price. I told them I received $30,000, but in reality, it had been $180,000. The $150,000 difference I had stored in a bank account I opened at a different branch, under my maiden name, Patricia and Stewart. Those savings were my only treasure, my only security in case of emergency. I had guarded them like a mother guards her child, touching them only for urgent medical expenses or when I helped Michael with money problems he never repaid. But now, sitting on my sunken bed, calculating on my old calculator, I realized that with the rent they wanted to charge me, those savings would run out in less than 2 years. And after that, what? The facility? The street? Becoming a burden to other relatives who would likely receive me with the same generosity as my own children? January 9th was my birthday. I turned 72. I woke up early with that silly hope you never lose, expecting that perhaps, because it was my special day, things would be different. I put on my sky blue dress, the one Robert said made me look like a princess, carefully styled my hair, and even put a little blush on my cheeks. I went down to the kitchen expecting to find at least a "Happy Birthday" written on a napkin. But I only found the usual routine: Michael eating breakfast quickly while checking emails on his phone, Chelsea yelling at the kids to hurry so they wouldn't be late for school, Jake searching for his gym uniform among piles of dirty laundry. "Good morning," I said, trying to sound cheerful. "Morning, Mom," Michael mumbled without looking up. "Could you make me some coffee? I'm late for an important meeting." No one remembered. Throughout the entire day, no one said anything. I cooked food, washed dishes, folded laundry, swept the deck, and performed every chore with the secret hope that someone would appear with a surprise, with a hug, with a "Happy birthday, Mom," said with affection. At 3 in the afternoon, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked out of the house and went to Mr. Henderson's bakery, 5 blocks away. With the last $30 I had in my purse, I bought a slice of triple-layer cake and a tiny candle. I returned to my room, closed the door, put the candle in the cake, and lit it with a match. I sang "Happy Birthday" softly, to myself, while tears soaked my cheeks. I made a wish I didn't even dare fully form in my mind, and blew out the candle. The cake tasted like loneliness. Like humiliation. Like 72 years of life that apparently weren't worth 5 minutes of attention from my own children. That night, when they thought I was already asleep, I heard them talking in the living room about weekend plans. "We could go to Cancun," Chelsea was saying. "The kids have Monday off, and it would be perfect for us to relax a bit." "Yeah, but we'd have to leave Mom alone," Michael replied, and my heart sped up, thinking he might finally show some consideration. "Oh, don't be dramatic," Chelsea laughed. "She's an adult. She can take care of herself. Besides, it's good for her to learn to be independent now that she's going to be an official tenant." "You're right. It's not our responsibility anymore." It wasn't their responsibility. Their mother, who changed their diapers, who stayed up all night when they had fevers, who sold her own assets to help them, who worked double shifts to put them through school, she was no longer their responsibility. I got out of bed and went to the small mirror above the dresser. I looked at myself for a long time. I saw a 72-year-old woman, with wrinkles that told stories of others' worries, with hands marked by years of unpaid domestic labor, with eyes tired from crying in secret. But I also saw something else. I saw Patricia and Stuart, the woman who had survived the poverty of her childhood, who had raised children practically as a child herself, who had buried her husband with dignity, who had faced every crisis with the strength that only women of her generation possess. That woman in the mirror had $150,000 saved. That woman had options her children didn't know about. That woman didn't have to beg for love from those who had turned her into an expense to manage. The next day, while Michael and Chelsea were packing their suitcases for Cancun, I took my driver's license, pulled my savings ledger out of its hiding spot, and left the house without saying where I was going. At the bank, the executive who assisted me treated me with the professional courtesy deserved by a lady with a considerable savings account. I asked her for information about international transfers, exchange rates from dollars to euros, and requirements for opening accounts abroad. "Is this for a special investment, Mrs. Stewart?" she asked with genuine interest. "It's to purchase my freedom," I replied, and for the first time in months, I felt my voice possess the firmness of the woman I used to be. That night, while my family enjoyed their first night in Cancun without the nuisance of having me around, I stayed on the internet until 2 in the morning, researching properties for sale in Spain, calculating costs of living, reading testimonials from Americans who had emigrated in their later years seeking a more dignified life. I found something that took my breath away: a small villa in a coastal town near Valencia, on the market due to a quick divorce sale. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a small garden, a 15-minute walk from the beach. Price, €35,000. I had enough money. For the first time in my life, I had enough money to buy something that was completely mine, where no one would charge me rent to exist, where no one would make me feel like a burden, where I could live my final years with the dignity they had stolen from me. On Monday, they returned from Cancun, tanned and relaxed, loaded with souvenir bags and that cheerfulness that comes from having fun without worries. The children wore new t-shirts with dolphin logos, Chelsea sported a cultured pearl necklace that surely cost more than 2 months of my social security check, and Michael had that satisfied smile of someone who had spent money without remorse. "Grandma, you should have seen the hotel," Olivia shouted with genuine enthusiasm, the first real emotion she had shown me in months. It had an infinity pool, and you could see the ocean from the bed. And there was a buffet 24 hours a day. For a moment, I felt a pang of hope. Maybe they had missed me. Maybe they had thought of me while enjoying those ocean views. "That sounds lovely, sweetie," I said, stroking her damp hair that smelled of chlorine and salt. But Chelsea immediately cut her off. "Olivia, come help me unpack. And you, Jake, take the dirty bags to the laundry room so Patricia can wash them." Patricia. Not even Grandma or your grandmother. Just Patricia, as if I were the trustworthy domestic employee. Over the next few days, the routine became suffocating. I got up at 5:30 to prepare breakfasts no one thanked me for, washed clothes that immediately got dirty again, cleaned floors that were soiled again before I finished mopping the whole house. But now, every chore was accompanied by comments about the expenses I generated. "Patricia, try not to use so much detergent," Chelsea would say every time she saw me doing laundry. "It's outrageously expensive, and you don't contribute proportionally to the cleaning costs." "Mom, could you shower faster?" Michael would ask when he noticed I took longer than 10 minutes in the bathroom. "The gas bill is through the roof, and we need to be more conscious of consumption." Everything I did, every minute I existed in that house, had become a cost someone else had to absorb. It was like living under a microscope where every breath was measured in dollars and cents. On Wednesday night, as we were having quesadillas that I had prepared with cheese I bought with my own money, Chelsea announced something that chilled my blood. "Oh, I forgot to mention. My cousin, Alexis, is coming to study for her master's here in Phoenix. She needs a cheap place to stay for 6 months." Michael looked up from his plate with interest. "And where is she going to live?" "Well, I was thinking," Chelsea said with that smile I knew too well. "We could rent her the back room. It's perfect for a student. And since she's family, we could charge her maybe $750 a month. My room." They were talking about renting my room while I sat there, chewing on a quesadilla that tasted like cardboard. "That sounds perfect," Michael responded immediately. "That's extra money that would be great for the kids' tuition." "And where would I stay?" I asked, my voice sounding so small I barely heard it myself. "Oh, Patricia, don't worry," Chelsea said with that false sweetness she used when she wanted to be especially cruel. "We can put a cot for you in the laundry room. It's temporary, just 6 months. And obviously, since it would be a smaller space, your rent would drop to, let's say, $550. The laundry room. They wanted me to sleep between the washer and cleaning products, breathing chlorine fumes and fabric softener, in a tiny space where there wasn't even room for a chair. Or, Chelsea added, as if she had just had a brilliant idea, "You could look for your own place. With what you pay in rent here, you could find a small apartment for yourself in a less expensive neighborhood." The children continued eating as if nothing was happening, already accustomed to hearing conversations where their grandmother was treated like an object that could be moved, stored, or discarded according to the needs of the moment. That night, after washing the dishes and cleaning the kitchen, I went to my room and closed the door. I took out my phone and checked the villa website in Spain again. It was still available. The price hadn't changed. The description read, "Stately home in a coastal village, ideal for retirees seeking tranquility and quality of life. 500 meters from the Mediterranean Sea, with all basic services included. 500 meters from the sea. I could wake up every morning and walk to the beach before breakfast. I could sit in my own garden and drink coffee without anyone charging me for the sugar I used or timing how long it took me to finish it. I imagine living there. Waking up when I wanted, eating whatever I craved, watching TV without anyone telling me I was wasting too much electricity. Receiving visits only from people who genuinely wanted to see me, not from relatives who tolerated me out of obligation." The next day, without saying anything to anyone, I returned to the bank. This time I didn't just ask questions. I told the executive I wanted to make an international transfer to purchase property in Spain. "That's an excellent investment, Mrs. Stewart," the young woman said while reviewing the documents. "Real estate in Spain has been very stable, and for retired Americans, it's a very popular option. Do you have legal counsel there yet?" "Not yet," I admitted. "I'm just starting the process. I recommend contacting an American law firm that has correspondents in Spain. They will handle all the paperwork so the purchase is completely legal, and you can obtain your residence visa as a homeowner." Residence visa. I hadn't thought about that, but the idea excited me more than I expected. I could leave the US legally, live in another country where no one knew me as the woman living off her children's charity, where I could invent a new identity, Patricia, the American woman who had the courage to start a new life at 72. On Friday morning, while Chelsea was eating breakfast and checking her phone, she received a call that put her in a very good mood. "That's wonderful. Yes, of course. She can come see the room Monday." When she hung up, she looked at me with satisfaction she didn't try to hide. That was Alexis. She confirmed she wants the room. She's coming Monday to sign the lease. "Patricia, you're going to have to start moving your things out this weekend so we can clean the space thoroughly." Moving my things? As if they were old junk cluttering the place. "Where should I take them?" I asked. "For now, to the garage. You can start sorting what you need there until you decide whether you'll stay in the laundry room or find another place." The garage. Among Robert's old tools, and used tires, and boxes of holiday decorations no one had reopened since we stored them in January. That afternoon, when everyone left to do the weekend shopping without inviting me, I was alone in the house for the first time in weeks. I took advantage of the silence to call the law firm the bank executive had recommended. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, explained the entire process with a patience I had forgotten existed. He told me that with my money, not only could I buy the villa, but I would have enough left over to live comfortably for several years, especially considering that the cost of living in small Spanish towns was much lower than in large American cities. Mrs. Stewart, he told me at the end of the conversation, allow me to be honest with you. I've helped many older individuals in similar situations. Sometimes, when the family doesn't appreciate what you contribute, the best decision is to seek a place where you are valued. And believe me, in Spain, seniors are treated with much more respect and consideration. When I hung up the phone, I sat in the empty living room for a long time. Outside, I heard the normal sounds of a Friday afternoon: children playing in the street, cars passing, neighbors chatting on their porches. Sounds of normal life, of families who probably loved and cared for one another. For the first time in months, I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel angry. I felt free. As if I had been carrying a very heavy backpack for years, and finally someone told me I could take it off. That night, when they returned with grocery bags full of food that I would have to unpack, store, and then cook, Chelsea handed me a used cardboard box. Here, Patricia. So you can start packing your personal belongings. We don't want Alexis to think the room comes furnished with old junk. Old junk. That's how she saw my belongings. My recipe books inherited from my mother, my photo albums from when Robert was alive, my Sunday dresses, my medicines, my memories of a lifetime, old junk that was in the way. Saturday morning, I got up before dawn. Not because I had to prepare breakfast for anyone, but because I had made the most important decision of my 72 years. While everyone slept, I pulled my old suitcase out of the closet, the one I used for my honeymoon with Robert over 40 years ago, and began packing. Not everything. Just the essentials. My most comfortable clothes, my medications, the important documents I had kept in a yellow folder for years, the few pieces of jewelry I had left from my mother, and a photograph of Robert I always carried in my wallet. The rest, all that old junk as Chelsea called it, could stay for them to sell, give away, or throw out. I didn't care anymore. At 7 in the morning, while the house was still silent, I slipped out without making a sound. I left my suitcase by the entrance and went to the kitchen to prepare breakfast one last time. Ham and eggs, refried beans, coffee in the machine I had bought with my money, tortillas heated on the griddle that had belonged to my mother. Everything served on the table as always, with the napkins folded and the glasses filled with orange juice. But this time, next to each plate, I placed a handwritten note: "Thank you for teaching me that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about distance. Patricia." I took my suitcase, walked out of the house where I had lived the last 3 years of humiliation, and closed the door for the last time. I didn't slam it. I didn't make a sound. I just closed it softly, the way you close a chapter you never want to read again. The taxi I had ordered the night before was waiting for me on the corner. The driver, an older gentleman with a grizzled mustache, helped me load the suitcase and asked if I was going to the airport. Yes, I said. To Phoenix International. A flight to Madrid. Madrid. Saying those words out loud gave me a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. I was going to Madrid, then Valencia, then to my new life in a villa by the sea where no one would charge me to breathe. During the drive to the airport, my phone started ringing. First one call. Then another. Then text messages arriving one after another like machine gun fire. I didn't answer any. I didn't read any. I just looked out the taxi window at the Phoenix landscape that I might never see again. At the airport, while checking in, the flight attendant asked if I was traveling alone. Yes, I replied. I'm traveling alone for the first time in my life. And I feel wonderfully free. She smiled at me with that genuine warmth that only young people can have when they see an elder doing something brave. How exciting. Are you going on vacation? No, I said. I'm moving there. I bought a villa on the coast and I'm starting a new life. The flight attendant's eyes widened with sincere admiration. That is incredible. I hope I have your courage when I'm your age. My courage. It had been so long since someone recognized I had any positive quality that the words brought tears to my eyes. But they were good tears. Tears of pride. In the waiting area, I finally decided to check the messages that had been arriving all morning. I had 15 missed calls and over 20 text messages. Michael, Mom, where are you? Your suitcase is gone. Michael, Mom, please answer. We're worried. Chelsea, Patricia, this is highly irresponsible. The kids are asking for you. Michael, Mom, if you're upset, we can talk. Don't do anything crazy. Chelsea, if you went to a hotel to play the victim, that's very childish of you. Michael, Mom, we checked, and your money is missing. What did you do? They had already discovered my savings account was empty. They already knew I wasn't the helpless old woman they thought I was. They finally understood I had resources I had never revealed. Jake, Grandma, Dad says you left. Is it true? I'm sad. That message hurt. Jake was the only one who sometimes treated me like a person and not an obstacle. But it was too late for regrets. I had made my decision. I decided to respond to just one. To Michael. A short and clear message: Son, I left for a place where I will be valued for who I am, not for what I can pay. Take good care of your children. I hope they never treat you the way you treated me. Patricia. Then I turned off the phone and put it in my bag. I wouldn't turn it back on until I reached Spain. The flight was long but comfortable. It was the first time in years that no one asked me for anything, no one timed me, no one made me feel guilty for taking up space. I ordered red wine with dinner and sipped it slowly, savoring every drop as if it were French champagne. I read a tourism magazine with photos of Mediterranean beaches and Spanish towns full of white houses with red tile roofs. The flight attendant who had checked me in came by to visit several times during the flight. How are you feeling? She asked as we flew over the Atlantic. I feel like I've been carrying a very heavy rock for years, and someone finally told me I could put it down, I replied. That must have been a difficult decision. The easiest decision of my life, I told her, and realized it was true. The hard part was taking so long to make it. I arrived in Madrid on a Sunday morning. The airport was huge, full of people speaking languages I didn't understand, but everyone treated me courteously when I asked for directions. No one saw me as a burden. No one treated my existence as a problem to solve. I took the high-speed train to Valencia. As the Spanish landscape passed by the window like a movie, I realized I hadn't thought about Michael, Chelsea, or the children in the last 6 hours. For the first time in 3 years, my mind wasn't occupied calculating how to please them, how to avoid upsetting them, how to be less visible so as not to be in the way. In Valencia, a taxi driver with a very strong accent drove me to the coastal town where my villa was located. It was called Culera, a small place with narrow streets and old houses painted white and yellow. The air smelled of salt, fresh fish, and flowers I didn't recognize but found beautiful. Is this your first time around here, ma'am? The taxi driver asked as he drove through cobblestone streets. Yes, but it won't be the last, I replied. I'm moving here. Ah, that's wonderful. You'll be very peaceful here. It's a very safe town, the people are friendly, and the sea is always there when you need peace. Peace? That word resonated in my heart like a promise. When we arrived at my villa, I gasped. It was exactly like the photos, but more beautiful. Small but perfect, with white walls, blue windows, a tiny garden full of plants I didn't know the names of, but which smelled like freedom. And in the distance, between the roofs of the neighboring houses, I could see a brilliant blue strip that was the Mediterranean Sea. My sea. My villa. My new life. The Spanish notary was waiting for me with the keys and the final documents. An elegant, older man who treated me with the respect deserved by a lady who had just purchased a property with cash. Mrs. Stewart, welcome to Spain. Your villa is lovely, and I am sure you will be very happy here. When I signed the papers and he handed me the keys, I felt I was signing my own Declaration of Independence. I was no longer Patricia, the annoying mother-in-law. I was no longer Patricia, the tenant who didn't generate enough income. I was Patricia Ann Stewart, owner of a villa on the Spanish coast, a citizen of the world, a free woman. That night, my first night in my own house, I sat in the small back patio with a glass of Spanish wine I had bought at the village market. The stars looked different here. Brighter. Closer. As if the sky also knew I had begun a new life. I felt no nostalgia. I felt no sadness. I felt no fear. I only felt peace. And for the first time in years, that peace didn't cost $700 a month. The first few weeks in Culera unfolded like a dream I didn't want to wake from. Every morning, I woke up without rush, without the anxiety of having to please someone or tiptoe to avoid disturbing anyone. I made coffee in my own kitchen, with my own machine, and drank it in the garden while listening to the birds sing in a language I didn't understand, but which sounded like music. The neighbor next door, Carmen Jimenez, introduced herself on the third day with a homemade Spanish omelet and a genuine smile. Welcome to the village, guapa, beautiful. I'm Carmen. I saw you arrived alone and thought it would be nice for you to meet someone from the neighborhood. Guapa. It had been decades since anyone called me beautiful. In Phoenix, they had first turned me into Mrs. Patricia, then into Michael's mom, and finally into the tenant who doesn't pay enough. But here, to this kind-eyed Spanish woman, I was simply guapa. Thank you very much, Carmen. I'm Patricia, from the States. The omelet smells delicious. The States? How wonderful. We have several people from your country here. You'll feel right at home, you'll see. She stayed and drank coffee with me for 2 hours, telling me about the town, the shops, the Thursday market, the August festivals. She spoke to me as if I were her lifelong friend, as if my opinion mattered, as if my company was something she valued. When she left, I sat in my garden for a long time, trying to remember when was the last time someone had visited me out of enjoyment, not obligation or because they needed something from me. During the second week, I decided to turn on my phone to check for important messages. I had 87 missed calls and over 100 text messages. Most were from Michael and Chelsea, but also some from numbers I didn't recognize. The first messages followed the usual pattern, feigned concern that quickly turned into scolding and ultimatums. Michael, Mom, we've gone 2 weeks without hearing from you. This is very selfish. Chelsea, Patricia, if you think this performance is going to achieve anything, you are sorely mistaken. Michael, Mom, please be reasonable. Come back and let's talk like adults. But then, as the days passed, the tone began to change. Michael, Mom, the kids ask about you every day. Jake is very sad. Chelsea, Patricia, we found your things in the garage. Are you seriously not coming back for them? Michael, Mom, I checked your bank account. How did you have that much money saved? Why did you never tell us? There it was. The real concern. Not my well-being, not my happiness, not whether I was safe. They were worried about the money they didn't know I had, the resources that had slipped through their fingers. Michael, Mom, if you invested in something risky, we can help you get your money back. Don't make financial decisions without consulting. As if I were a child incapable of managing my own assets. As if after 72 years of life, after raising children, working, and running a household for decades, I lacked the mental capacity to decide what to do with my own savings. Then came messages from other relatives who apparently had heard about my craziness. Cousin George, Patricia, your son told me what happened. Don't be stubborn. Family is family. Sister-in-law Linda, Patricia, Michael asked me to talk to you. Your children are the most important thing. Come home before it's too late. Family. Everyone spoke of family as if it were something sacred and untouchable. But none of them were there when I was humiliated day after day, when they made me feel like a burden, when they celebrated my birthday by completely ignoring me. The message that hurt the most came at the end, from Jake. Grandma, Dad says you left because you don't love us. Is that true? I do love you. Why won't you answer my texts? That message broke my heart, but it also filled me with rage. How dare Michael manipulate his own children, making them believe I had abandoned them out of lack of love? How could he be so cruel as to use the grandchildren as an emotional weapon against me? I decided to respond. But not to Michael, not to Chelsea, not to the meddling relatives. Only to Jake, my dear grandson. I left because I needed to find a place where I would be treated with respect and affection. Your grandma loves you more than you can imagine, but sometimes adults need to distance themselves from places that hurt them. When you are older, you will understand. I love you very much. Grandma Patricia. After sending that message, I turned the phone off again. If they wanted to contact me, they would have to find another way. The third week, Carmen invited me to join the stitching group of the village women. We met Tuesdays and Thursdays at the community center, an old building with huge windows that let in all the Mediterranean light. There were 8 of us women, all over 60, all with different stories but something in common. We had reached an age where we were no longer willing to tolerate disrespect, where we valued our peace of mind above external expectations. Mary Jo had left her husband after 40 years of marriage because he had never learned to treat her as an equal. Pilar had moved from New York to Culera after her adult children decided she was too old to live alone, but she proved them wrong by buying her own house. Betty had invested her inheritance in a small artisan jam business instead of dividing it among nephews who only visited when they needed money. They all had stories to tell about relatives who had underestimated them, who had assumed that because they were older, they no longer had the right to make decisions about their own lives. The problem, Mary Jo said while embroidering tiny flowers on a tablecloth, is that people confuse old age with incompetence. They think that because we have wrinkles, we no longer know what we want. And the worst part, added Pilar, is when it's your own children. As if giving birth to them gives them the right to control us forever. I told them my story little by little, during those stitching afternoons where time stood still and words flowed as naturally as thread through our fingers. I told them about the rent they wanted to charge me, the laundry room they wanted to move me into, the forgotten birthdays, the feeling of invisibility in my own family. And what will you do when they come looking for you? Betty asked me with that practical wisdom that only women who have lived long possess. Because they will come. When they run out of money, when they realize they truly lost their free domestic employee, they will show up with tears and promises. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to forgive them. They are my children. The children who treat you poorly are not your children, Mary Jo said firmly. They are strangers who share your blood. Real children love you unconditionally, they respect you, they care for you. The others just use you. Her words cut deep because I knew she was right. Michael and Chelsea hadn't missed me, they missed the services I provided for free. They weren't weeping over the absence of Patricia the mother, but over the lack of Patricia the unpaid household manager. A month after arriving in Spain, while watering my new plants in the garden, I had bought geraniums, lavender, and a small lemon tree. I heard the doorbell ring. It was strange because I wasn't expecting anyone, and Carmen always knocked. I went to open it and froze. There stood Michael, thin, haggard, with wrinkled clothes and an expression of desperation I had never seen on him. Beside him, Chelsea looked equally worn out, with smudged makeup and the look of someone who had traveled many hours without sleep. "Mom," Michael said, his voice breaking. "We finally found you." They found me. As if I were a fugitive, as if I had committed a crime by choosing to live with dignity instead of continuing to tolerate humiliation. "How did you find me?" I asked, not inviting them in. "We hired a private investigator," Chelsea admitted without the slightest trace of shame. "It cost a fortune, but we had to find you." A fortune. They had spent money on private investigators, flights to Spain, lodging, international searches. But they never had money to treat me like a human being instead of an economic burden. "Mom, you have to come back," Michael pleaded, and for the first time in years, I saw real tears in his eyes. "The kids miss you so much. The house isn't the same without you. We miss you too." Tears. After months of treating me like old furniture, now there were tears. I looked at them for a long time without saying a word. Standing there at my door, with their small suitcases and tired faces, they looked like salesmen trying to convince me to buy something I no longer needed. The irony was delicious, them at my door, asking something of me, when for years I had been at theirs, begging for crumbs of respect. "You are not coming into my house," I told them with a calm that surprised even myself. "Mom, please," Michael begged. "We traveled all this way just to talk to you." "You traveled all this way to control my money," I replied. "If you wanted to talk to me, you could have done so every day I lived under your roof paying rent to exist." Chelsea tried to use her usual manipulative smile. "Patricia, we understand you're upset, but this has gotten out of hand. We need to resolve this situation like adults." "Like adults?" I repeated. "Like when you wanted to charge me for using the bathroom? Like when you talked about renting my room to a student while I was eating dinner at the table? Like when you treated me worse than domestic help?" The neighbors started peering through their windows. Carmen appeared in her garden, pretending to water her plants but clearly paying attention to what was happening. In small towns, family dramas often become local entertainment, but for the first time in my life, I wasn't the victim in the story. "Look, Mom," Michael said, trying to sound reasonable, "maybe we were wrong about some things, but you also exaggerated everything. We never wanted to make you feel bad." "I exaggerated?" I laughed, but it wasn't a joyful sound. "Did I exaggerate when you told me I was a burden? Did I exaggerate when you forgot my birthday? Did I exaggerate when you wanted me to sleep in the laundry room between chlorine and detergent?" "Mom, that's over," Chelsea interrupted impatiently. "The present is what matters. The kids need their grandmother. The family needs to stick together." "Family," I repeated the word as if it were poison. "You don't know what that word means. Family doesn't charge emotional rent. Family doesn't make you feel guilty for breathing. Family doesn't treat you like an unnecessary expense in the monthly budget." Michael stepped closer, with that look of a manipulative child he had perfected since he was little when he wanted to get his way. "Mom, you're right. We messed up. But now we want to make it up to you. We want you to come back home, and we'll treat you the way you deserve." "The way I deserve?" I looked him straight in the eyes. "And what exactly does that look like?" "Well, no rent, obviously," he said quickly. "And you can keep your room. Alexis can find somewhere else." "And my TV in the room? My space in the refrigerator? My right to shower without a timer?" I asked sarcastically. "Is all that included in the way I deserve package?" Chelsea turned red with fury. She wasn't used to being spoken to with such irony, especially by an older woman she had treated as an inferior for years. "Patricia, don't be dramatic. We are trying to resolve this in a civil manner." "A civil manner?" I moved closer to her. "A civil manner would have been treating me with respect from the start. A civil manner would have been asking me what I needed instead of dictating what I was going to pay. A civil manner would have been treating me like your mother-in-law, not like a bothersome tenant." Carmen approached from her garden, pretending she was looking for her cat but clearly wanting to be nearby in case I needed support. Her presence gave me strength. For the first time in years, I had someone on my side. "And furthermore," I continued, "I want you to explain something to me. How is it that you never had money to treat me like family, but you had money to hire private investigators, buy plane tickets to Spain, pay for hotels, and rent cars? Where did all this capital come from that never existed when it concerned my well-being?" Michael went pale. He hadn't expected me to call them out on the money spent to find me. That's different, Mom. That was an emergency." "I was an emergency?" I laughed again. When I lived with you, was it not an emergency that a 72-year-old woman had to pay rent from her meager savings? When you wanted to move me into the laundry room, was that not an emergency? But finding me to drag me back, that's an emergency. Mom, please don't make this harder, Michael pleaded. The kids ask about you every day. Jake cries at night saying his grandma doesn't love them anymore. There it was again. The emotional manipulation using my grandchildren. The same trick that had worked for years to keep me silent and compliant. Jake cries? I asked. And where were those tears when I needed someone to remember my birthday? Where was that love when you spoke to me as if I were transparent? Mom, the kids aren't to blame for our mistakes, Michael said, trying to sound noble. You're right, I nodded. The children are not to blame. But you are. You turned me into a stranger in my own family. You taught me that my value was measured in dollars and cents. You made me feel that my love was priceless, but my existence had a cost. Carmen moved closer, dropping the cat pretense entirely. ¿Todo bien, Patricia? All good, Patricia, she asked in Spanish with a Valencian accent. Sí, Carmen. Muchas gracias, yes, Carmen. Thank you, I replied. Just visitors who are leaving now. Carmen's presence completely changed the dynamic. Chelsea realized she had an audience, that people were watching how she treated an older woman, that her behavior was being judged by strangers who didn't know her side of the story. Mom, Michael said, lowering his voice, we understand you're hurting, but we already spent a lot of money coming all this way. Please, at least listen to us inside. You already spent a lot of money? I repeated his words. And what does that have to do with me? I didn't ask you to come. I didn't ask you to spend your savings on investigators. I didn't ask you to invest in chasing me across the continent. Patricia, Chelsea interrupted with poorly disguised desperation, if you don't come back, what will happen to the kids? Who will watch them when we're working? Who will cook their meals? Who will take care of the house? There was the naked truth. They didn't miss me. They missed my services. They weren't crying for Patricia the mother and grandmother. They were crying for Patricia the free domestic employee who did the laundry, cooked, cleaned, and babysat without wages or benefits. Those are your responsibilities, I told them. You are the parents. You chose to have children. You bought a house that requires maintenance. You chose jobs that require long hours. I already raised my children. I've completed my time changing diapers, making meals, and staying up late with fevers. Now, it's my turn to live for myself. But Mom, Michael insisted, family helps each other. That's the plan. Children take care of their parents when they are young, and parents take care of their children when they are older. That's the plan? I looked at him with disbelief. In what part of the plan did you take care of me? In what part of the plan did you treat me like a mother and not a burden? Your plan was for me to pay for the privilege of serving you freely until I died. Carmen gently touched my arm. Patricia, do you want me to stay here with you? Her gesture of solidarity filled my eyes with tears. A stranger, a woman who had known me for barely a month, offered unconditional support, while my own family had come all the way to Spain not to sincerely apologize, but to reclaim my domestic services. Thank you, Carmen, but I'm finished speaking with them, I said. I turned back to Michael and Chelsea one last time. Listen closely, because I won't repeat this. I am no longer your housekeeper. I am no longer your free nanny. I am no longer your emotional life insurance. I am Patricia and Stewart, owner of this villa, resident-to-be of Spain, a free 72-year-old woman who finally learned to value herself. Mom, you can't be serious, Chelsea said with genuine panic in her voice. I have never been more serious in my life, I replied. If you want a relationship with me, it will be based on mutual respect, not economic need. If you visit me someday, it will be because you love me, not because you need me to solve your household problems. And if I ever return to Phoenix, it will be as an honored guest, not as a tenant paying to exist. I left them standing there at my door, with their suitcases and their belated tears, and I walked into my house. I closed the door softly, but firmly. Through the window, I watched them walk slowly toward the waiting taxi, defeated, confused, probably wondering how they had lost control over the woman they thought they had domesticated forever. That night, Carmen came over with chamomile tea and homemade cookies. She didn't ask what had happened. She just sat with me in silence while I processed the greatest liberation of my life. I had looked my abusers in the eye and told them, no more, without trembling, without apologizing, without asking permission to defend my dignity. 6 months after that confrontation at my door, I wake up every morning to the sound of seagulls coming from the Mediterranean Sea. It's 7 in the morning, but not because I have to get up to make breakfast for anyone. I wake up at this hour because I want to, because my body has found its natural rhythm after decades of living according to the schedules and needs of others. I put on my blue silk robe, the one I bought at the market in Valencia last week without having to ask anyone if I could indulge myself. My bare feet touch the cool terracotta floor of my villa, those words still fill me with pride every time I think them. I go to the kitchen and make coffee in my Italian espresso maker, the one Carmen helped me choose because she says coffee should be a ritual of pleasure, not a morning obligation. The aroma fills the entire house, my house, where no one will tell me I'm wasting too much coffee or that I should hurry because others need to use the kitchen. I go out to the garden with my steaming mug and sit in the wicker chair I bought 3 months ago. The lemon tree I planted is bearing its first tiny fruits, still green, but promising. The lavender plants I sowed have grown so much that their scent wafts into the street, and neighbors who pass by greet me with genuine smiles and comments about how lovely my garden looks. My garden. My plants. My peace. The sea is visible from here, between the roofs of the village houses, a blue strip that changes color depending on the time of day. In the mornings it is light blue, almost silver. By midday it turns intense turquoise. In the afternoons it takes on golden tones that seem to melt into the sky. And I have time to observe all those changes, to appreciate every shade, to sit in silence and simply exist without having to justify my existence to anyone. My phone, which I now keep permanently on, receives occasional messages from Phoenix. At first they came daily, then once a week, now perhaps once or twice a month. The tone has completely changed since Michael and Chelsea's frustrated visit. There are no more ultimatums. No more scolding. No more emotional blackmail. The messages now sound different. Michael, Mom, hope you're doing well. The kids send their love. Jake, Grandma, I saw online that Spain is really beautiful. Is it true you live near the sea? Olivia, Grandma Patricia, we're studying about Spain in school. I told my teacher that my grandma lives there, and she said you are very brave. Brave. My granddaughter thinks I am brave. A word I had never associated with myself, but which now fills me with pride every time I read it. Even Chelsea, who didn't send me a single message for months, wrote 2 weeks ago, Patricia, I know we made a lot of mistakes. I don't expect your forgiveness immediately, but I want you to know we have learned a lot from your leaving. I hope you are happy. I didn't respond immediately. I took 3 days to think about how those words made me feel. Not rage. Not resentment. Simply, nothing. Like watching a movie you liked years ago but that no longer moves you the same way. Emotional distance is, sometimes, the greatest gift we can give ourselves. I replied cordially but without opening the door to immediate reconciliation. Chelsea, thank you for your message. Yes, I am happy. I hope you also find a way to be happy without needing others to sacrifice their dignity. Patricia. The women in the stitching group have become my true family. We meet 3 times a week, not just to embroider and knit, but to talk about books, travel, recipes, and life in general. We have all arrived at this stage of our lives with stories of sacrifice, selflessness, and years dedicated to pleasing others. And we have all discovered, late but not too late, that we deserve to live for ourselves. Mary Jo officially divorced last month and says she feels 20 years younger. Pilar opened a small pottery studio in her house and sells her creations to tourists. Betty expanded her jam business and now supplies 3 local restaurants. Carmen, my lifeline neighbor, wrote a memoir about her life in the village and is sending it to publishers in Madrid. We are all flourishing. We are all discovering talents and passions that had been buried under decades of family obligations and social expectations. I have also found my new passion, photography. I bought a digital camera with the money I used to spend on gifts for people who didn't appreciate my gestures, and I dedicate myself to capturing the sunsets over the Mediterranean, the wrinkled and wise faces of the market women, the architectural details of the village's ancient houses. My photos have started to draw attention. The town hall asked me to hold an exhibition to promote tourism, and 3 of my images will appear in the Valencian Community Tourist magazine. I, Patricia and Stewart, photographic artist at 73 years old. It's never too late to discover who you are when no one is telling you who you should be. On Sunday mornings, I walk to the beach. It's a 15-minute walk through cobblestone streets that wind up and down between houses painted white and yellow. I bring my camera, a thermos of coffee, and a book. I sit on the rocks near the lighthouse and spend hours watching the waves come and go, constant but never identical. Sometimes I think about my previous life. About the years I spent believing my worth depended on how useful I was to others. About the nights I stayed awake worrying about money that wasn't mine, about problems I hadn't created, about people who took my love as guaranteed and inexhaustible. I no longer feel rage for those lost years. Rage is a luxury I can no longer afford at my age. Instead, I feel something akin to compassion for the woman I was, the one who believed that love was bought with sacrifice, that families stayed together through silent selflessness, that mothers were condemned to be eternal servants to children who grew up but never emotionally matured. That woman did the best she could with the tools she had. Now I have different tools, clear boundaries, recovered self-esteem, a bank account I manage myself, and the certainty that deserving respect is not something you must earn daily, but something you must demand as a basic right. Last month, I received an unexpected video call from Jake. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying, and he apologized for not defending me when his parents treated me poorly. "Grandma, now that I'm 17, I understand things I didn't before. I want to apologize for being a coward. I should have said something when they treated you like you were invisible." His words touched my heart, not with guilt but with hope. Jake is growing, developing his own moral conscience, learning to distinguish between blind family loyalty and genuine support for the people we love. "My dear grandson," I told him, "you were a child. Children are not responsible for the mistakes of adults. But I am happy to know that you are growing up with empathy and that you can recognize when something is wrong. Can I come visit you someday?" he asked shyly. "I want to see your new life, your house, the sea." "Of course," I replied. "But when you come, you will be my honored guest, not an emissary for your parents. You will come because you want to know your grandmother, not because someone sent you to convince me to return." He understood the difference perfectly. And that gives me hope that perhaps, in a few years, when he is a completely independent adult, we can build a genuine relationship, based on mutual affection rather than traditional family obligations. This afternoon, while watering my plants and listening to the soft jazz on my new radio, I realized something profound. For the first time in my adult life, I am not waiting for something to change in order to be happy. I am not waiting for others to treat me better, for others to value me more, for others to recognize my sacrifices. I am not living according to external expectations or promises that might never be fulfilled. I am happy now, in this moment, in this villa by the sea, with my plants, my books, my friends, my camera, my freedom to decide how I spend my time and my money. It is a quiet happiness, without euphoria but also without anxiety. It is the happiness of someone who has finally learned that life is not a long-term investment in the gratitude of others, but a daily gift we deserve to fully enjoy. As the sun begins to set over the Mediterranean, painting the sky with oranges and pinks that I never had time to appreciate in my former life, I raise my camera and capture another moment of beauty. Then I put the equipment away and sit in my garden, sipping my Spanish wine and feeling the sea breeze caress my face. Tomorrow will be another day of freedom. Another day of decisions made by me and for me. Another day of this new life I built with the courage I never knew I possessed and the money I saved for years, never imagining that one day it would buy me not just a house, but a completely new identity. And as the first stars appear in the sky above Culera, I smile thinking of all the women who, like me, are discovering that it is never too late to choose dignity over comfort, authenticity over approval, and peace over false family harmony. Have you also experienced something similar to what I've just told you? Do you know someone who had to choose between their dignity and family expectations? Tell me your experience in the comments. If this story touched your heart, like and subscribe to the channel so that this message can reach someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes, stories of liberation are the push we need to write our own happy ending.